What's up, everybody? It is Matt from Bioendurance PT and Performance. I'm really excited about this video because this video is all about pronation and overpronation of the foot and how it relates to runners. There are two specific myths that often get thrown around revolving pronation. The first one is that pronation can actually cause injury of the foot, especially overpronation. And the second is that pronation and overpronation are not an efficient way for us to run and are not efficient for our run form. So what exactly is pronation? Pronation is a very normal movement of the foot, and essentially pronation is when our foot falls inwards or when our inside arch actually starts to collapse a little bit. Now, we often learn that pronation is supposed to occur every time we actually take a step and put our foot on the ground in order to accept our weight. Then our foot is supposed to become a rigid lever for us to be able to push off from and propel us forward while we are walking and while we are running. So there's some new research by Behling et al. That is actually changing the way we think about the foot. And really this research is starting to say that probably the foot isn't really supposed to become a rigid lever. And there's actually a lot more movement that occurs through the foot than we actually realize. One specific quote from Behling et al. Actually dispels our first myth about pronation. It states that foot pronation is a naturally occurring movement of the foot and cannot be linked consistently to injuries. So there we have it. Pronation is a normal movement of the foot, and research actually does not link pronation to any specific injuries at all. So how about how pronation relates to running form? Well, Behling et al. Also states that people with greater foot pronation and flatter feet actually stored and returned more energy via the spring-like function. So of course more research needs to be done in this area, but there's a possibility that pronation and overpronation may actually help us run more efficiently. So now let's see what actually happens when we put this into practice. Now it's important to note that my feet in particular have a pretty good arch, and I don't pronate too much in a static standing position. However, you can see that when I am walking, my foot overall is pretty stiff and pretty stable, especially when I'm in shoes. You don't see that fall in with pronation. Now that I'm running in shoes, there's a lot more force involved with running. And you can see that when I take a step and put my foot down on the treadmill, you can see my foot actually fall into more pronation. And then my foot comes out of that pronation as I'm taking a step forward to help propel myself forward on the treadmill. You can see the same thing happen when I'm running barefoot. So when I'm walking barefoot, once again, there isn't as much force involved, so there isn't as much need for my foot to go into pronation, for me specifically. However, when I'm running barefoot, once again, you can see my foot fall into a little bit more pronation in order to allow myself to propel forward. So now when we compare a side view and look at my arch when I'm walking versus when I'm running, you can see that when I'm running, that arch is actually a little bit more flat because there's more force involved and my body's trying to absorb that force and then use that force to help propel myself forwards. So as you can see, as I'm running in both shoes and barefoot, there's actually a lot of movement that's going on through my foot. And my foot really isn't supposed to be a rigid lever, but there's movement that helps me to accept the forces as I'm taking a step, as well as movement that helps me to propel myself forward while I'm running. Ultimately, there's 26 different bones and 29 different muscles that involve the whole foot and ankle complex. And so with that many joints and muscles controlling movement, it only makes sense that there should be movement through the foot during these important phases of both walking as well as running. So it's important to note that this relates to runners specifically that aren't dealing with any injuries at all and may have some overpronation of their feet. Injuries are very multifactorial and individual in nature, so if you're dealing with the injury of the foot, ankle, knee, hip, whatever it is, make sure you see a professional, and especially a physical therapist or a doctor, to make sure that you're getting evaluated appropriately for that. So I hope that helps to dispel many of the myths around pronation and overpronation of the foot, and helps to make you a little bit less fearful if you find that you do pronate or overpronate at your feet. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Feel free to like and subscribe, and don't hesitate to comment any questions that you might have down below. Until next time, happy training.